dodged the fireball in the tower lobby, ordered a full evacuation of the World Trade Center, the collection of buildings that was home to the Twin Towers. So before this day, they had never even planned, they never had fire drills. We have fire drills at school, right? They never did that. So when this happened, they didn't know how to escape the buildings. And that's why it's so important that we have these fire drills at our schools so that we're always prepared. Poor communications and a damaged public address made it nearly impossible to broadcast the evacuation order. People in the buildings continued to receive mixed messages from emergency operators, sometimes to stay put and other times to leave immediately. Some people left, others departed and returned. In the North Tower, the fire department even had trouble contacting their firefighters as they climbed the stairs to the impact zone. Their handheld radios barely operated. Making and receiving orders was hit or miss. So it was very chaotic that day, the communication, because like they said earlier, so many people were trying to call for help. Firefighters, like walkie-talkies, they weren't working. They couldn't communicate well, and that's what caused a lot of the chaos and confusion. So here's a picture of everyone trying to escape the buildings. It's very dark in there from all the smoke. Everyone's covering themselves with jackets, and some people are on the ground. They probably got hit with some debris. It was very scary. High on the 88th floor, Frank DeMartini, the building's construction manager, hadn't heard anything from the rescue operation based in the lobby. He didn't even know about the plane crash. He thought someone had planted a bomb or that the mechanical room had exploded. His office was wrecked. The ceiling had collapsed, flames licked the walls, and smoke filled the air. Dazed people stumbled about. He surveyed the ruins, gathered a team, and went to work. First, DeMartini discovered an open stairway and sent down more than 25 people who had been trapped. Among them was his 89-year-old coworker, Mo Lipson. My heart was pumping harder than usual, Mo said. Then, DeMartini, along with coworker Pablo Ortiz and others, made their way up to the 89th floor. They found more people trapped by debris and freed them, sending the rescue people down the stairwell. DeMartini and Ortiz continued up toward an unknowable chaos, looking for more trapped survivors. So that's two more examples of heroes on that day. They weren't firefighters or policemen. They were just two people that worked in the building, and they risked their lives to go up to higher floors and find more people to help them bring them down. That was really brave of them. You can see in this picture, this is a picture of the building from the outside, and that's all the smoke coming out. You see people calling for help, and those are on the really high floors. Could you imagine being on the 99th floor and calling for help? The floors at the crash site were a tangle of burning wreckage. Smoke billowed across lower Manhattan. On the floors above the burning rubble, hundreds of people were trapped. Using phones and email and voices sometimes calm and other times frantic, they sent the same message: "We're stuck, send help." Police helicopters flew close. People were hanging out the building, gasping for air, said a helicopter crew member. There was no way of getting near anyone in a window. We were helpless, totally helpless. Heavy smoke and intense heat from the fire made rescuing people from the roof impossible. Some of the trapped people jumped. Suddenly, a helicopter pilot shouted, "There's a second plane." So we have the helicopter over there trying to rescue people, and they can't even get to them, and then they see another plane coming. So we can see the plane coming at that window. This is the second tower. Suddenly, Stanley Premnath saw the second jet race straight at his 81st floor office in the South Tower. He dived under his desk, screaming. Everything exploded. Walls and ceilings collapsed. Part of the jet's wing jammed into a door. The overpowering stink of jet fuel made breathing difficult. But Premnath was alive. Not only was alive, the only survivor at the heart of the impact. So this man, Stanley, was the only one who survived on this floor, because that was the heart of the impact. That's where the jet crashed through. And now we can see in this picture everyone on the ground trying to escape, and that's what they see, the two buildings that are just in flames. The second hijacked jetliner had crashed to the 77th to 85th floors of the South Tower. Massive flames spewed from the tower. Wreckage rained down on the street. It was 9:03 a.m., 17 minutes after the strike on the North Tower. People now understood the earlier crash was not a freak accident, but a deliberate attack. Despite the horrific crash, one stairwell on the South Tower remained intact. Unlike the North Tower, people above the crash had the means to escape to the street in the chaos. However, many people would not find it. Firefighters scrambling into the South Tower discovered a working elevator that carried them to the 40th floor. From there, they climbed a stairwell. Passing them on the way down were escaping civilians. The lack of panic by the civilians impressed the firefighters. People patted the firefighters' backs and wished them well. In return, the firefighters encouraged them for their long flight down. So we see here, these are everyone trying to escape the building, and those are all the firefighters going into it. And, you know, a lot of times during times of trouble, people pull together, strangers pull together and they help each other, and that's really good to do when you're in a tough time, to help each other out. And we can see here that all the civilians leaving the building are encouraging the firefighters, they're patting them on the back and thanking them for their help. And I think that's really nice. It's one of the nice parts of this day, how much people came together and helped each other. What do you think you'd do in a situation like this? Do you think you'd be helping? Yeah, you think so? I think you guys would also be helping each other. Below, one elevator screeched to a halt at the building's main lobby. It had plunged 900 feet before automatic safety brakes stopped it. The riders pried open the doors and escaped. In the North Tower, another elevator sat stalled and locked closed at the lobby. It had come to a halt when the plane struck. Chris Young, its lone occupant, knew nothing of the catastrophe around him. Firefighters going up couldn't hear his shouts and marched past him, unaware of his predicaments. High above was another trapped elevator. From its intercom, the riders learned that there had been an explosion. The riders forced open the doors and discovered they had stopped in front of a wall. One of the passengers was a window washer. He began scratching the wall with the metal edge of his squeegee to make a hole. Could you imagine being stuck in an elevator? Some of the people didn't even know what was going on around them because they were just alone in the elevator with no communication. Dense smoke billowed over both towers. Falling wreckage hurtled to the ground. Despite the risk, hundreds of firefighters, police, emergency medical technicians, private security guards, and even workers from the neighboring hotels stationed themselves around the World Trade Center, tending to the injured and helping office workers flee. To avoid the debris raining down on the plaza outside the tower, they directed evacuees through neighboring buildings or through underground corridors. Thousands streamed away. At 9:37 a.m., 200 miles away from the disaster zone in New York, the military's headquarters in Washington, D.C., known as the Pentagon, became the third target of the hijackers' attack. So there was 3 targets on this day. They hit the World Trade Center, Twin Towers, and then they were going for the Pentagon. The jets swooped low and plowed into the building at ground level. The flaming impact nearly reached the center courtyard. It was a loud roar. The building shook. Jet fuel poured into the corridors and ignited, taking all the oxygen out of the air, said an Army officer. The heat inside was so hot, it felt like the sun kissing you, said a soldier. Rescuers raced to the scene. From exits everywhere, 20,000 people eventually evacuated the building. Back in New York, in the wreckage of the South Tower, Stanley Premnath yelled, "Help! Help! I'm buried! Is anybody there?" Brian Clark was there. He had been fleeing his ruined office when he'd heard shouts. Clark and Premnath clawed the rubble. Clark yanked the trapped man free, and the two fell to the floor in a hug. "I'm Brian," Clark said. "I'm Stanley," Premnath said. The two men found the stairwell and headed down. So we're going to take a break here, And we're gonna finish up the story in a little bit, but right now, since that's a lot for you guys to take in, I just wanna take a break, and I'm gonna let you guys turn and talk to your partners, and you're gonna discuss some of the new things you learned from this story about 9/11, and some things you might be wondering still that maybe we'll learn when we go back to reading it. You could talk about how you're feeling. Just, turn and talk, discuss this book for a little bit, and then we're gonna go back to reading. And if you have any questions, you can ask me, okay?